Welcome to Vision for a Change. I'm Michael Payton, filmmaker, entrepreneur, citizen. Over the years, I've had the privilege to work with some of the biggest names and institutions in this country. I've worked with everybody from Jay-Z to the Joe Biden White House. When it comes to media, entertainment, politics, government, I've been in a lot of these rooms, so I know how shit really goes down. I started off as a kid from Oakland, raised by a single mother who taught me the power of my voice, who taught me the power of leadership through art and through storytelling. And she also taught me that leadership and storytelling means nothing without having a vision. And that brings us where we are today. Somewhere along my journey, I realized that, the people in power, the people who are and the gatekeepers, they're not listening to us. So we got to create these conversations ourselves. We got to start having these conversations and having real talk if we want to advance our agendas, if we actually want to get what we need to get done. All the professional politicians and the elites, they're not going to save us. Trust me. So that's why I created Vision for a Change, a bold, unfiltered conversation about leadership, values, and the future of this country. This series is about re-envisioning what leadership really looks like for a new generation. Not professional politicians or career consultants, but real people. The people who actually live the consequences of the decisions that the folks with all the fancy titles make. The teachers, organizers, innovators, local officials, people who lead with courage and not their credentials. Courage and not their credentials. You heard what I said. We have a real problem right now in our country. We have a real problem right now in our discourse that people feel disconnected from politics. They feel disconnected from their civic duty because there's so much chaos and craziness going on one side. On the other side, you got people who they feel are just talking down to them. People who don't really understand their real lived experiences. People who don't want to hear their voices in these conversations. People who will shut you down if you don't agree with them. And we have to stop that right now in this country. We're never going to make it anywhere if we're just fighting each other. If we're fighting within, we can't even decide what's the best path forward because everyone is an expert. Everyone has their own bias and their own views that they want to stick to. They don't want to hear the other side. They don't. And that's what I'm trying to create with this platform is a space where we can have real conversations with real people who are really thinking differently about leadership, who are really thinking differently about some of the issues that we face as a country, that we face as a people, that we face in our cities and in our states and in our local municipalities. Like, we need to really be having a different kind of conversation, not a top down, but a bottom up. And because I'm tired of the same old conversations from the same old kind of people, these conversations that we're going to have are about purpose and conviction and finding real solutions grounded with humanity. We're not worried about the headlines. I'm not worried about getting 1 million views or followers, subscription. I don't care about being popular. I care about creating conversations that actually stimulate people's thoughts and get people thinking differently about how we can approach some of these things that we're facing. So I think there's no better way to start this podcast off than with someone who I think embodies that. Michael Tubbs, who's our first guest, he made history as the youngest mayor of a major U.S. city, and his city, Stockton, California. He's now running for lieutenant governor of California. He's a husband, a father, and a real visionary who is every day redefining what leadership can look like. In this episode, we talk about courage, economic mobility, and what it means to really lead with integrity. We having some real talk. We talking about the economy. We talking about faith and family. We're talking about manhood and what it means. Why so many black and brown men are leaving the Democratic Party? Why is that? What can we do to bring people back into the fold? What can we do to engage people in a different way that isn't shunning anybody else or putting anybody else down, but uplifting and encouraging black and brown men folks who work with their hands, folks who are providers, folks who want to provide, folks who want to actually do something with their lives, who want to have opportunities, but they're not being given these opportunities. So we're going out, we're making our opportunities. We're talking about that. We're talking about some real shit. So I really appreciate Michael for coming on the podcast. My first guest. I've known Michael for many years now. So when I tell you that this brother is the real deal, take my word for it. You know, he comes from a similar background that I come from. Raised by a single mother, grew up in, you know, a impoverished neighborhood, but used education, used his mind, his intelligence to not only lift himself out, but also lift his community out. Running for city council, running for mayor, winning, becoming mayor, a young mayor of his city, and really doing some innovative things to try and turn the city around. And there are some challenges in that as well, and we talk about that too. So I really hope that y'all are tuned in and locked in and ready for a great conversation. I'm telling you, we're not going to do the degular, same old political conversations. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in talking points from either side. I'm not interested in trying to make anybody feel comfortable or make anybody feel safe. We really want to have real conversations on this podcast, Vision for a Change, and I'm really grateful to Michael and all my guests I will have this season, and I'm grateful to Black Press USA. I have to say that we're doing this and we're streaming this through Black Press USA and NPA, which is the oldest black news wire, I think the only black news wire in the country that has been going for hundreds of years, making sure that all the black journalists and black newspapers are connected throughout this country, and that goes all the way back to, you know, times of slavery, times of Jim Crow, and all the way to the current time. We need these institutions more than ever, and I'm so happy to be having these conversations on this platform in this way. So I'm gonna be done with the talking. I'm gonna get right to this great conversation I have with former Mayor Michael Tubbs, what I think is the future Lieutenant Governor of California. So y'all tune in, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. Welcome, everybody, to Vision for a Change podcast. I'm your host, Michael Payton, and I am here with a guy that stole my name, Michael Michael Tubbs, current candidate for Lieutenant Governor of California. Before we get into it, Michael, I'm gonna give the people a little rundown of your record. Now you might be here for a minute, so let's hold on for a second, brother. Uh, Michael Tubbs is he made history at just 26 years old as the youngest mayor in America's history of one of the major cities in America's history. As the first black mayor of Stockton, California, as mayor, he launched the Stockton Economic Empowerment Demonstration, aka SEED, which was the first mayor-led guaranteed income pilot in the nation, and it helped inspire a national conversation and movement around economic mobility. He also raised over $20 million plus to create Stockton Scholars, giving thousands of students in Stockton the opportunity to attend college. His bold leadership and innovative approach caught the national attention, and he was the subject of the nationally acclaimed HBO documentary Stockton on My Mind. And today, Michael serves as special advisor to economic mobility and opportunity to California Governor Gavin Newsom, where he is helping to shape the statewide strategies that uplift working families. He's also the founder of Mayors for a Guaranteed Income, a national coalition of city leaders fighting for economic justice. He's a Stanford graduate, Harvard Institute and of Politics fellow, and a recipient of honors such as Forbes 30 Under 30. Michael has been recognized as one of the most forward-thinking public figures, public servants of his generation. He's also the author of a powerful memoir, The Deeper the Roots, where he explores his upbringing in Stockton, how it shaped his commitment to equality and leadership. And now he's taking his vision statewide as candidate for Lieutenant Governor of California. Did I get everything, Michael? Did I get everything?
Um, Married to an amazing woman, Anna Tubbs. I have three beautiful kids. Other than that, you got everything.
You can't forget the wife. Can't forget the wife and kids. You know, you gotta, we want you to not sleep on the couch tonight. So shout out to Anna Tubbs, his amazing wife, author, also acclaimed author and Very, very great visionary as well. So, Michael, let's get right into it. You announced your run for lieutenant governor. Tell us why. Why are you running for lieutenant governor?
Lieutenant governor position in California is the second highest position and the fourth largest economy in the world. We hear all the time about California being such a large economy, but the question for me has always been the fourth largest economy for who? Just the way I grew up with a mom who was 16 and worked very hard to get ahead, with a father incarcerated, and the work I did in Stockton with economic mobility, and just knowing that far too many in California are working incredibly hard and still can't make ends meet, still can't afford rent, they're forced to move to other places. So it's really that problem of poverty, of economic insecurity, of the status quo just not working in California, that drove me to run. The lieutenant governor also sits on the UC CSU and Community College Board. As the first one in my family to go to college, I know firsthand the power of higher education, the power of opportunity, the power of getting a chance to rewrite the narrative for your family, and your community. And that's something I'm passionate about, making sure that every young person in California has a chance. And lieutenant governor is the role. Um, that can make sure that happens. And then lastly, we are in crazy times politically. We are in an I wouldn't say unprecedented, but crazy times, and that where we need leadership. Leadership that's not just content with having a D by their name. Leadership that's not just content with going along and getting along, but leadership that's not trying to be something, but do something. And it's really that sort of existential question. Like, is this the best we can do? Is this the best way to respond to Donald Trump? Like, what are we actually going to do to make it so that my children live in America that's better than the America I grew up in? And that's why I'm running for lieutenant governor.
Yeah, man, you bring it up, that we're going through some crazy times. And when you were mayor in Stockton, we worked together and I know you were really innovative and you pushed the needle forward. You moved the conversation forward on a lot of things from seed to even the way we rethink about public safety and how you approach that. How will you bring uh that fire, I would say, to the lieutenant governorship when you're elected?
Yeah, well, that's part of the reason why I'm running, Mike, is this idea that I think proximity and problems being personal leads to more urgency.
Mhm.
Everything I did when I was mayor, 9 times out of 10, people told me not to do it because it never been done before or that was risky. When I said, hey, instead of locking everyone up, let's use data and find the 82 guys that are driving 82% of our homicides and let's give them an opportunity to get their tattoos removed, to get a job, to get some mental health help, to have an opportunity. And if they don't take advantage of that, sure, the consequences that have always existed will still exist, but let's add something new. And I think just being young, being serious about making things change, like things have to get better, gives me really the freedom and flexibility to dare to be different. And not just for different sake, but different because we know the status quo isn't working. One of my favorite quotes is from Brene Brown, where she says, leaders have to be committed not to being right, but to getting it right. And I'm committed to getting it right, to trying, to iterating, to asking questions, and all in service of this idea that if the status quo isn't working, we have to. We have to do something to make it better. And also with the realization that the world we are living in, the country we live in, are just somebody's ideas
Mhm.
who's no smarter than any of us, who thought this is the best way to solve this problem, or this is the best way to organize society. So in the same way, I believe we can use thinking to say, hey, actually, this doesn't work for everyone. So let's try it differently. All I have to say, my commitment is, I promise, the same fire, the same passion, the same innovation that led to the first guaranteed income project in this country's history, that led to a 40% reduction in homicides, that led to a universal scholarship program, is even more so burning. And is what I plan to bring to the office.
I love it. And Michael, you're seen as a not just a leader here in California, but I think, the work that you've done has made you a national leader on a lot of these issues, right? So what do you tell the people? A lot of folks out there, especially when I talk to my our friends on the left, people are really scared about what's going on right now. People are really afraid. I remember our first conversation that we had, first interview we did 8 years ago, it's hard to believe, right? You had said something that really struck me was that government is not this big machine or this monster, right? It's a bunch of people who like didn't get their coffee today, a bunch of people who got their own individual agendas who want to move their thing forward. When you try to tell that to people, they kind of tend to be like, yeah, yeah, but the government's going to do this and Trump is Trump, Trump. What would you say to people? Because we are in a sense in a state of emergency, if you will. We
Mhm.
are in a sense of urgency. But what would you tell the people that let once you get elected and once you know we have continued election, that things will be okay? Like, what can you tell the folks to kind of let them see like it's still important to get involved, to get engaged, and to vote, and to you know um, be there on the front lines? What would you tell the folks who are scared right now?
Well, that's why it's so important to know our history, the history of this country. There's been more presidents like Donald Trump than not like Donald Trump. We had human traffickers, enslavers, and rapists as presidents. We had um, avowed white supremacists as presidents. We had governors who were committed to allowing lynch mobs to murder people for voting or for speaking out. And our ancestors, our forefathers, our foremothers found a way to get us to this point where we have more tools, more access, and more power to resist. So I would say in this moment, fear alone is a luxury. Like, be afraid, but fear can't be debilitating. Fear has to lead to action. Be so afraid of nothing changing that you get involved. Be so afraid of things getting worse that you vote and get people to vote. Be so afraid that's not paralyzing, but it leads to action. Because again, we are only here because people facing much worse odds than us, people who were murdered while marching to go vote, beating by dogs, bit by dogs for trying to get a coffee. Young people being spit at, had the National Guard escort them to go to second grade. And they summoned the courage in spite of the fear. I think we have to look the same thing. And I think that comes from looking beyond this moment, like looking towards the future, looking towards not just what can be, but what we all deserve to live in a country that respects all of our humanity and treats all of us with dignity, right? So that's the first thing I would say. And then the second thing to answer your question is that's a large part of why I'm running. I'm not running because I have all the answers necessarily, but I am running because I know one answer is really standing on business and being very clear that there is no hierarchy of human value. That one person's life is not inherently more valuable than another's. That we all deserve dignity and that government has to work for all of us. And I think leadership has to set that tone, has to make it very clear. And I also think that just as Trump and Stephen Miller and Steve Bannon and Project 2025, all those folks, as committed as they are to taking America back to a dark chapter in our country's history, as committed as they are to mass kidnappings and deportations, not just of undocumented folks, but of anyone who they think isn't American, i.e., anyone who isn't white or white Christian, right? Like they're committed to that. And we have to be just as committed to inclusion, to justice, to opportunity, to diversity, and stand on business too. And be willing to break some eggs, be willing to go to court, be willing to disrupt some norms, be willing to offend people, be willing to do something differently because we have to match fire with fire. And I think when we do that, that's how we get people to stop being afraid. That's how we get people more in the game and seeing, no, it's not just a one sided fight. That the other side is squatted up too and is ready to battle and fight for the things we care about.
Yeah, 100%. And that brings a couple of questions to my mind, Michael. You and I were about the same. I think we're the same age, actually. And so we know our generation has grown a little bit. Some of us have grown a little apathetic. Some of us have grown a little disheartened by the situation. What motivates you to get involved and be engaged the way you are? Right? You, as we know, you were engaged at a very young age. 26-year-old elected mayor of Stockton. I know you were on city council before then. You've been involved, but what gives you the the motivation, or what drives you to do what you do? Because honestly, it's a lot of things that leave a lot of people hopeless right now, but you're still out here fighting the good fight. So what's your motivation?
So I first ran for office when I was 21 because my cousin was murdered in Stockton at a house party. And it was really that anger and that pain that led me to think about, okay, if I don't channel this some way, it'll be self-destructive. Like if I don't figure out how to channel this to something that's bigger than me and my pain and my trauma, it's not going to end up well. So that's part of it. And then I'm a person of faith. I think I am blessed to do the work that I do. I think that it's a calling for me. It's a sense of purpose. Like I feel most alive in doing this. And also I think as part of my faith demands that when people are hungry, they get fed. And when they're naked, they get clothed. And when they're in jail, that you visit them. That as you do unto the least of these, you do unto the founder of my faith tradition, right? So that it's part of like for me, what it means to be a good person or a person of faith or a righteous person is to fight for a world where everyone is treated the way God sees them as someone worthy of dignity and opportunity and love and hope and second chances and fairness and all that. And then lastly, I don't know, I'm such a student of history and I feel like if all the people we look up to and get days off on their birthdays,
Mhm.
if they were selfish or apathetic, what would happen? Like, if you read any history of any culture, any tradition, any faith books of any culture, any tradition, these mighty things, these seismic changes happen with small acts of people who do the impossible. We think of Hanukkah and in the Jewish faith,
Mhm.
of a couple people in the cave, right? With a little bit of candles. Changed the world. We think of one of my favorite movies, 300,
Yeah.
300 of them fighting. We think of, I mean, a poor, like a 26-year-old preacher from Birmingham, Alabama, changing the United States.
Right. Right.
Or before that, you think of like Harriet Tubman. Like history is full of folks who somehow, again, I think had a vision for what could be, and those people motivate me because I just want to be able to say thank you. I just want to be able to say, look, I did my part. I just want, and then also with kids now, it's important because my kids ask a lot of questions. It's important for me to have clear answers with documentation when they ask me, "What were you doing when fascism was in America?
Right.
What did you do, Dad? Who did you speak up for when they were targeting um, undocumented immigrant and trans kids and zip tying black children in Chicago?
Yeah.
What did you do?"
Right.
When they were occupying your state, what did you do? So I want to be very clear with my kids. Like, look, daddy ain't perfect, but daddy didn't just talk. Daddy was part of the fight and moving things forward. And again, but it's the only way things change. And I'll end after this, but I think there's also something about like being hungry and
Mhm.
being poor
Mhm.
and being discounted and being counted out and being like just having low expectations for like I think there's something about that experience that leads to like, "Nah, we we gotta change all of this." Like, I think it's also that. I think it's just knowing what it's like to be on the margins, knowing what it's like to be surrounded by hopelessness, knowing what it's like to be around folks, not in my family necessarily, but in the community that just felt like their lives were worthless, that they had no value, that they were just stuck and just angry, nihilistic. And I think that those experiences as well just give me a passion to show like, no, there's more. Like, no. And also I truly believe that many of the answers to the questions we have are in these places and these people we forget about, or not even forget about, we intentionally marginalize and oppress.
Yeah.
There's something motivating about that for me. Like, no, let's solve these problems. Let's give every kid a shot and every kid a chance.
Absolutely. I love that you say that, and you talk about faith. You talk about coming from the mud, coming from nothing, and seeing having that lived experience. And that's what I want to talk about next. I think a lot of folks have this perception of the Democratic Party and our politics in general, but particularly Democrats, that Democrats are elitist, out of touch, don't know real folks. Are more focused on the data than they are about uh actual people. Is that something that, that you agree with? And how do we change that perception? Um, because it's a lot of our folks who starting to think that, and even though the policies on the other side are not helping our folks any better. So what can we do about, not just messaging, but making sure people feel seen and heard?
Yeah, well, I tell people all the time, I am a proud Democrat, but the Democratic Party didn't inform my views or my worldview or how I think about issues or even how I talk about issues. My experiences, my faith, my family, those inform my views, which led me to the party most in line with those views, which doesn't mean, but the party's not perfect, right? Like there's no institution that's man made that's going to be perfect. So if you're looking for a party, particularly a political party, to be your savior
Right.
or to get 100% right, keep looking. And the Republicans have figured that out. They're in a party that's messed up, that's corrupt, like it's fine. It's like it aligns with the root. So I think that's the first thing. Let's just the Democratic Party is not perfect, will never be perfect. A, but to your point, in this country, you have two choices most of the time. People hate saying, no, you have two choices,
Right. Right.
right? And one choice is closer to a world where you and your family can thrive, where you and your family go to sleep at night, knowing that you don't have health care when you wake up,
Right.
knowing that you still have government benefits when you wake up, knowing you still have retirement, social security when you wake up, is another side that's taking all the resources, all the money to make 20 people richer,
Right.
right?
Right.
But to your question though, the Democratic Party, we do have to level and message with folks like that. We can't. I mean, I got 2 degrees from Stanford. I could do that, but we can't have discussions like we're in a college seminar when folks are hungry, when folks are scared, or folks are confused, and when folks are triangulated by an information ecosystem that's riddled with misinformation.
Yeah.
Like, folks need to be able to first trust you.
Right.
Like, who are you?
Right.
Where do you come from? What are your values? Do you see me? And then you have to be able to speak to people in a way that they understand and in the way that they can hear. And also, part of that means we need a whole bunch of messengers, right? You don't use a hammer where you need a screwdriver. You don't need a screwdriver where you need a wrench. Like we can't, the same person may not be the best messenger to every community. And the Democratic Party has to make sure we're lifting up leaders that speak to different constituencies, particularly the constituencies we know we're losing or we lost.
Right.
We need more Latino men
Right.
in the Democratic Party leading and speaking and being the face, particularly to speak to that community.
Right.
We need more Black men in leadership of the Democratic Party, speaking and leading particularly. And that's not to discount the work of Black women who are the base of the party. Like and they're amazing. But I think in part of the Black girl magic conversation, rightfully or wrongfully, I think a lot of dudes felt that what's there for me?
Right.
Right? Like, oh, y'all, oh, they got it. What about me? Even though the
Right.
second most reliable Democratic voting bloc behind Black women or Black men,
Like
like
that. Yeah.
we're just as much as the base. And then I would say, I remember in 2020, I was doing some surrogate work for Biden Harris to Black communities. We Zoom barbershop talks. And one guy said something so brilliant. Before I spoke, he said, Mayor, with all due respect, please don't come here just talking about marijuana legalization,
Mhm.
just talking about criminal justice reform and second chances. Talk to us like you talk to everybody else. We want to talk about money. We want to talk about wealth. We want to talk about home ownership. We want to talk about entrepreneurship. We want to talk about access to capital. We want to talk about. I was like, we also have to speak to people on issues they want to hear, not that we think we want to hear, not with some biased view of who a group is. And that doesn't mean that criminal justice reform isn't important. It's just that that's
Right.
not the only thing Black men care about.
Right.
And everyone cares about money. Everyone cares about
Yeah.
having enough or getting more or passing on for their kids. Everyone wants to own a home or have access to, or have the ability to say no to owning a home or at least be able to afford rent. So long answer, but no, I do think both parties, frankly, can appear elite and out of touch. I think the Republican Party does a better job of tapping to like the culture. Like they do dumb stuff, but it plays well with people. Like the UFC fight at the White House, how dumb. But I'm sure for people who love
Right.
UFC, that's like dope.
Right.
Or remember when Trump went to all these like Trump
Right.
don't know nothing about no sports. Remember he went to all the college football games. He was at
Nothing.
NASCAR. He was
Nothing.
just showing people I care about what
Right.
like what did it for me is like Kamala Harris actually worked at McDonald's. Her
Right.
husband
Right.
actually worked at McDonald's. Her sister-in-law actually worked at McDonald's. This
Right.
man was on an apron for 2 hours.
But he's
But
one of the people. He's one
but
of the
it's
people.
it's folks and people, and I think we have to be better at the theatrics.
Right.
We got to be better at, especially because Most of us come from that, so we gotta be better at, like, being at the fish fry, the cookouts,
For real.
BET
Yeah.
Awards,
Yeah.
like, where the people are. The
Yeah.
Grammy, like, wherever our folks are, we need to be, and it's, like, legitimize, like, "No, what's important to you is also important to me. I'm not that far removed. I
Right.
watch what you watch. I listen to what you listen to. I'm part of you." We have to do a better job with that for sure.
Yeah. No, I think you said something really great because you know, I think it was Vice President Harris, it might have been Senator at the time, who was saying, you know, if you want to talk about Black women issues, let's talk about the economy, let's talk about public safety, let's talk about national security. Women are concerned about that. And I can say the same thing about Black folks are also concerned about public safety. Black folks are also concerned about their pocketbooks, like plain and simple. I mean, I think we've been beating this drum for a long time, Michael. But is there? I mean, what can we do to like just I don't know, like I don't know if it's change the perception because I feel like we know this stuff, but I feel like it never changes. The message never changes. The messengers never change, and I feel like we need to amplify more folks like yourself who really come from a place where that has been overlooked, that really and actually has done something about it. But I feel like we don't give enough of a soapbox to folks like yourself, right? Um, I mean, you might answer this already, so forgive me, but just anecdotally, what can we do? Like, how do we change that perception? Because to my next question, I'll get to it. Is what happens in our communities is that we end up getting subject to like missing disinformation because we are not able to reach our folks, right? And I know that you were, my God, you were the target of a bad misinformation campaign in Stockton, and what did that teach you about the power of missing disinformation and what we need to do to fight it?
Oh,
Um,
man, that's a whole separate episode. No,
yeah,
first before I answer the second question, I first wanna say what you're doing is important, and what folks like my good friend Reese Colbert and others are doing are so important. It's creating our own information channels, creating our own echo chambers, creating our own media information system where you all have the trust and credibility to bring folks in to listen. So thank you for your work. On the second point, yeah, I had no idea actually how successful mis and disinformation could be. Like I had no idea the sophistication of like the algorithm and micro targeting. And also I had no idea of the neuroscience and psychological research that talks about sort of illusory truths, as my wife taught me. Like folks will just believe something even though it's not true. Or how racism, like all the isms, racism, any bias, like if you're presenting with that information and it coincides with your worldview, it'll become true. So what I learned from that is that you have to over communicate and you have to communicate where people are. Right. At the time, my first race was in 2012. So I was like a young, old politician. I was like, "What? We don't gotta do that. I've been winning. Just gotta go on the TV, go on the news,
right.
out to the newspaper editorial board, do your state of the city, do a couple Facebook lives. You're good." I had no idea the amount of how the world was digital, and I
Right.
don't. So that's why I have a TikTok now. I'm doing a lot more videos, just talking a lot more because I realize that part of it is like just bringing people on the like people trust. If people trust you,
Yeah.
they'll verify when they hear lies about you. If people don't know you and they're first getting introduced to you through lies and they happen to believe that black people are criminals, they hear the mayor stealing money who's black, they're like, "Yeah, of course he is, right? Yeah,
Right.
it's online, it must be true." So I learned that. I learned the importance of it's like over communicating and responding to some of this stuff, right? I grew up in an era politically where it was like when they go low,
We go high.
you don't give your pearls to the swine. You don't play with in the pig with
Yeah.
the mud because the pig gonna like it. But not at some point, it's politics. Some point, everybody gotta be a pig. Like, at some point, you gonna get we have to get down and dirty. Like, some point, like,
Gotta be in the comments. You gotta be in the comments.
you can't just this idea of being above the I was like, "I'm the mayor." Like, I'm not gonna argue with a blogger. I'm above the fray. And it's like, "Nah, bro." Like, people like, authority is different now. And you're not arguing with a blogger, you're arguing with a lie. You're arguing for the truth. So Just that, and that you have to repeat the truth over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. Michael, shifting gears a little bit. So you are special advisor to Governor Newsom on economic advising. I'm gonna get the name wrong, but
Yeah, economic mobility.
economic mobility. There you go. There you go. Um, Talk about what you have learned now at a state level, right? Having worked at the city level and now being in those rooms at the statewide level, what do people need to know? Um, wh- and are we going to see ourselves out of this economic uncertainty that we're in? I know California is a little bit different from the rest of the nation, but
Mhm.
what can you tell us about where the economy is headed?
Yeah, well, the biggest learning has been just the vastness of California. Like the fourth largest economy in the world
Right.
is larger than 97% of other countries. So it's the sheer amount of industries in this state are it's just this is scale. And lucky for us in this moment, we're able, through our market share, to create side deals with countries to kind of navigate around the crazy tariffs and other crazy nonsensical economic policies that Donald Trump and Republicans are doing that are driving up cost for everyone and damaging trade relationships. And in fact, the lieutenant governor is the state's representative for foreign trade. So one of the roles I will have will be going to our partners in Mexico, in Central America, in Africa, in the Caribbean, in Asia, in Europe, and talking about how California is open for business and making sure our farmers can sell their crops and making sure that our green energy exports and all the other things that make our state great continue to happen and are unduly impacted by this president's economic policy.
Yeah.
But I mean, we see the indicators. Unemployment's up,
Mhm.
inflation is up, um, interest rates
Housing
are up,
too damn high.
housing's up. Everything's too expensive, right? And that's going to be the case naturally.
Right.
And but in California, there's things we can do to lower cost for California families when it comes to building, when it comes to permit like there's a lot of so part of what I want to do as a lieutenant governor is look at all the things we can control. Because to talk about how terrible Trump is, like it's self-apparent at this point, but people still need to afford groceries. People still gotta afford gas. People still gotta afford housing. So given the reality of Trump, what are we going to do about it? And that's what I'm excited to do as lieutenant governor, whether it's looking at building more on public land, like at the
Yeah.
UC, CSU community college level, when it's like the permit and CEQA reform bills I testified on this session in the legislature, like just doing everything we can to lower costs for California families has been the agenda. We think about healthcare and the fact that healthcare premiums are going to rise for a bunch of people over the next couple months, almost double, and their income has not doubled, and everything else has gone up. And thinking about okay, what can we do in California to help lower healthcare costs? Easier said than done, but that's sort of the work that we're going to have to do and deal with the reality that in the Trump presidency, everything's going to be more expensive, which means we have to find ways in California to lower the cost of the things that we have control over.
Yeah. Yeah. When I talk to folks up and down the state, other than obviously economy, the two biggest things I hear people talk about is housing costs and public safety. People feel like we pay too much damn money in taxes for us not to have it. We're here in LA and all due respect, our metro system is not necessarily the best. You go and then you look at the public safety. There's a housing crisis where we have folks laying on the streets and there's safety concerns around that. One, Michael, are you are is this next administration and under your leadership will it be able to do something about lowering taxes for everyday Californians? One, and how what are those steps to start building more houses? We know we have the NIMBYs and the all the YIMBYs and all this stuff. How do we address those issues to actually start doing this? Because again, we know the problem, we know the solution, but somehow the action to get there is always stunted somehow.
Well, you know what's hilarious, Michael? I used that same phrase at a talk I did last week. I said the issue in California isn't that we don't know the problem. We know the problem is housing and affordability broadly. B, we know it's not. We don't know the solutions. We know the solution is more housing of all types, including market, and especially affordable, deeply affordable, permanent supportive. But the delta is leadership. Like we have to really force and push the issue and break some eggs and have some conflict. And that's why, to get a little bit wonky, this last session, I was the expert witness on the two most controversial housing bills in the legislature, which people thought was dumb because I'm running for office. You want to piss people off. But I was like, no, the issue is housing. So even before I'm in office, let me show leadership and say, I'm willing to go to mat. I'm willing to put credibility on the line. I'm willing to even disagree with some friends when it comes to building more housing. And those bills were a assembly bill from Buffy Wicks to build to do CEQA reform. So CEQA is a California Environment Quality Act. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. You want to protect the environment. But it has been weaponized to slow down development or to stop
Yeah.
projects or to increase concessions from folks.
Yeah.
So it was a common sense bill that, hey, for land that's already been entitled, that the next door property has already gone through a CEQA process, maybe the land next to it doesn't need to go through the same process. Like maybe the squirrel's gonna be okay on
Right.
this side, it's gonna be okay right next
Right.
door, right?
Right.
And that was controversial, but so
Right.
I was an expert witness, lead testimony, did a bunch of press around it. And then the second one was SB 79, which is still, as of this taping, still they passed through the legislature though. It's awaiting the governor's signature. And that bill just makes it so that near transit hubs like the metros and other places, you can build and build multifamily, build duplexes, etc. And a lot of people I love were against that policy for different reasons, and some reasons even valid. But for me, the main thing is the main thing. And perfect can't be the enemy of good. And we're in a housing crisis. We're in a housing shortage. Homelessness is chronic in the state. It's an epidemic. And it also, when we think of all the communities we talk about, we want to stand up for, foster youth are 50% of our homeless population.
Yeah. Yeah.
LGBT kids, the majority of our homeless youth. Black people, 6% of the population, 30% of folks who are homeless in the state. All the things we talk about, the things we care about, the things we put flags on and march for
Yeah.
are disproportionately impacted by the fact there's not enough housing, right? So, hey, we have to build more housing. We have to build it faster. We have to build it cheaper. We have to
Right.
build more of it, duplex. So, my commitment, and I've told people this all the time, is I'm going to be the most YIMBY lieutenant governor the state has ever
Yeah.
seen. It's going to piss some people off, but we have to build because not only just for homelessness, but this conversation around Prop 50. Even with Prop 50, we still may lose 4 congressional seats in the next decade because of population loss.
Right.
Because we're losing population because people can't afford housing. We don't have enough houses.
Right.
And then we also have to do things like rent's too high. So we have to lower the cost of rents.
Yeah.
We know evictions lead people to homelessness. We have to use the data we know in terms of folks who are at risk for eviction. Let's figure out ways to get them some resources so they're not evicted. And
Right.
we all save money in that manner. So that's on the housing front. And then I I guess growing up poor and then leading a city that had declared bankruptcy, I am very compassionate, but also very frugal with public dollars. Like we can't spend for outcomes, we have to spend for intentions. So if we're taking all these taxes from folks, there has to be a return on that investment.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm obsessed with is there's a study that came out from USC that said if everyone just had access to the benefits that we've already paid for, we would almost be at zero poverty for LA County.
Wow. That's
Why is that not the agenda for everybody? Why are we not just focused on that? So, so I think
and we're
because
paying for it.
we're in a deficit, where
Mhm.
we are in a very perilous budget time. So before doing anything related to taxes, we have to make sure we can account for how every tax dollar is spent and
Mhm.
that we're maximizing use of programs that we're spending money on. 'Cause that's important.
Yeah.
Number two, instead of taxing individuals, we should look at if we need to raise taxes, raising revenue on corporations
Mm.
and raising revenue. There's a proposition, Prop 15, that barely lost, that would have separated residential from commercial property.
Mhm.
Because part of the issue in California and part of the housing wars is that Prop 13 locks in property value Property taxes people have to pay, regardless of the house being worth like 5, 6, 7, 8 times more.
Right.
But I get it, folks ain't gonna play with their equity. They're not trying to pay more houses. That's cool.
Right.
That's not the fight. Uh, but commercial real estate is different.
Right.
Right. Commercial real estate provides opportunity. So I would say we have to look at that before raising taxes on individuals because we're already paying a
Right.
lot of taxes in the state. And then B, folks are happy to pay those taxes if they can see a return on the
Sure.
investment. So we have to do a better job of A, making sure those tax dollars are being used effectively, but B, also telling people how they're being used and say, hey, this is what's working. This is why we're using it. So people feel like, okay, my money's going to a good place. Because California people are generous. Like
Oh,
folks
yeah. Oh, yeah.
aren't even mad about paying taxes. They're just like, okay, I pay taxes for homelessness, but I still see homelessness.
Right.
Or where's the money?
Right. Right. No, 100%. I mean, as a small business owner myself, right? I I look at my tax at the end of the year. I'm like, WTF? Like, what the, but I'm happy though, right? I'm actually one of those people who's happy. If I do well, I want my neighbors to do well. I want the state to do well. But to your point, if we're not seeing where those dollars are going, if we're still, you can't drive past the 10 without seeing just a whole bunch of folks underneath the thing. And God bless those folks. Folks have, some folks have mental health problems, some folks have drug problems. Like we know what the problem is, but where's our money going to address this? And I think from a business standpoint, you see a lot of businesses, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not seeing the right data, but are businesses leaving California? Is that a true trope? And either way, what will you do as lieutenant governor that will continue to attract more business to come to California rather than keeping making folks go to Florida or somewhere else?
Yeah, no, so like every good lie, it's a partial truth, right? Some businesses have left or have threats. There's been a lot of threats
Right.
to leave California, like very public threats from big companies to leave California. Um, and some businesses have left. Um, but I'm actually more worried about the amount of businesses that haven't started
Hmm.
because of the regulatory environment, because of how expensive it is, because of all issues with crime and perceptions of crime, et cetera. So no, it's definitely the business environment and climate in California is definitely something we can work on because we should be the best place for business. We should be the place that businesses want to open. And I think it just takes like a clear permitting process. Like this, what you need, is what you do. This is how you get it. Like just simple, seamless. B, I think we have to just make sure that folks feel safe, right? Like just make sure there's a perception of safety. Three, we have to make sure folks feel celebrated, that they're part of the solution, that they're not the problem, that we don't demonize successful business people, that we don't demonize, especially because taxes and jobs are provided by small business owners.
Right.
Innovations are started by small business owners. So I think we'll be wise to learn from, and we'll never be Texas or Florida because like having no rules is actually crazy, folks. Like people hate
Yeah.
when I say that, but
Mhm.
you need some regulation. Like it's like a
Yeah.
kid with no parent. Like it's cool
Right.
for a
Right.
weekend, but like
Right.
you're not gonna get to 18 living like that.
Yeah. Yeah. For real.
Like, but not all regulation is good. But you need some like rules
You
for the
absolutely need some. Yeah.
like, rules for how you treat.
It's like you never hear California man, does it's always the Florida man, love our people in Florida, but you gotta have some regulations.
So but, we could learn from I was talking to some business people, and they says even it's the way they're treated when they go to open. Like,
Mhm.
it feels like they're, like, excited, that people wanna problem
Yeah,
solve, that people aren't
yeah,
putting barriers, but they're trying to get to a yes. So I do think that is something we can continue to work on and make sure that businesses know 'cause I think we can't rest on our laurels because we don't have to be Texas and Florida because we have the best university system in the world.
oh, yeah,
We
amen.
have diverse, brilliant workforce. We have natural amenities. We have a quality of life people like. We have weather. We have like folks want to be in California, so that's an asset. But that asset can't make us lazy or can't make us complacent on the other things. So, as lieutenant governor, part of the ways I want to reconfigure the role is to be sort of the small business and small tech guy, and to be the person that's kind of helping people navigate through the system, making sure that folks, people like certificates, make sure folks feel love and
Right,
certificates when
right, right,
they're seeing that they're noticed.
right.
Making sure that we're looking at sort of How do we make it easier for folks to access government? How do we make it easy to create regulations that are keeping up
Yeah.
with new technology? So our slow regulatory framework doesn't slow down the pace of innovation. Making it so that folks feel like there's a real champion that sees and understands and knows that like to provide all the services we want to provide for folks and all the opportunity we want to provide for folks. We need folks to be able to open some businesses and employ some people and make some money. Like I keep telling people, making money isn't bad. We live in a capitalist society. Like, make your money. Like, the issue is that if only some people are able to make money,
Right.
or if some people are able to make money off government
Hmm.
while everyone else can't. That's the issue. Or when some people consolidate whole industries, so they're monopolies. So now small people can compete.
Right.
That's not good. That's not what we're for. And I would never stand for that. But I'll definitely stand for entrepreneurs, small business people, folks no one that wants to be poor. No one should be poor. In
Right.
poverty, make money. California way.
California way. Mike, I want to go back to something you said earlier. You said talking about pissing people off, right? By kind of going against the grain. If there's one thing I think that kind of defines one of the things that defines your career, your leadership is being courage, right? Having the courage to run for office at 21, or you know, and again getting run for mayor at such a young age, and people telling you can't do it, and that you know, and you're doing it. You're like, so whatever people tell you not to do, you're doing it anyway because it's the right thing to do. Here you are now running for lieutenant governor of California. I think you'll be the second African American ever. I think probably the youngest. I dare I say, venture to say that you'll be probably the youngest lieutenant governor, second most powerful seat in the state of California. What do you tell your fellow? I would say Democrats, but forget that. Even just like young leaders, right? About courage, because I think that's something that we don't see a lot in our politics overall. People are so afraid to lose their seat. They're so much thinking about the next election that folks are not operating from a courage standpoint. So what would you tell the young folks who may be somebody 18, somebody might be 21 who wants to run or who wants to get engaged, but you know, the incentive isn't there necessarily. What would you tell them?
I would say if you come from a background like mine, or if you look like me, or in some other way or othered from sort of traditional models of what people think leaders look like, no one's ever going to come anoint you. No one's going to ever come and say you should run. No one's ever going to say you're the guy, you're the girl, you're the pick. That if you're waiting for that, that will never come.
Mm,
So you have to summon the courage in yourself to run, but run only if you truly believe that if you don't run,
mm,
things will get worse. If you don't run, like, you have to be motivated by by a fear of what happens if you don't. Because you still focus on if you do, then maybe it's not the right time. Maybe you don't have to run right now. So that's the first thing. But listen, they're not going to pick you. You won't be the pick originally. You will be overlooked. But that's like part of the course. That's part of the game. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is that courage begets courage, meaning that it's always courage isn't the absence of fear either.
mhm,
Courage is feeling fear
mm,
sometimes and acting anyway. It's
mm,
fearing fear, it's feeling fear, but realizing that all the fear isn't necessarily truth, it's a feeling. But oftentimes it's not true. But you feel that and act anyway. That's what courage is. Like running for office, run, terrifying. I didn't know what I was doing. I'm running for mayor at 25 in a city that had never had a black mayor ever against the incumbent mayor and a city county supervisor, knowing if I lost the race, I was out of a seat. That was scary. That was like, okay, like, are we sure to do this? Running for lieutenant governor after losing re-election, very scary. But fear can't be debilitating. It has to be a fuel. It has to be channeled to like, okay, I feel this fear, but if I don't run, what happens to my people? What happens to the issues I care about? What happens to progress? What happens to the future? And that's sort of what always motivates me.
yeah,
And then lastly, like, yeah, like, but the more courageous you are, the more courageous you become.
yeah,
So I remember, man, I remember my first tough vote as a council person. it was my first meeting. It was to appoint a council member to the seat, and some of my friends, some of my supporters, the current mayor and others had a pick lined up. But I wasn't feeling that pick. There was another pick that I really
Mm,
want.
mm,
I remember casting that vote, and the mayor was texting me during the meeting, like, vote the right way. I'll do this. I'll make you vice mayor if you vote, blah, blah, blah. Voted the right way. People were mad. Then I went home.
mm,
I woke up. Nothing. It was fine. I was like, "Oh, okay." I was like, so that feeling was real. But I was like, it's like getting on the roller coaster for the first time. Like, okay, well, that drop's gonna drop, but
right,
you're gonna make it. Like, you're gonna feel it though, up, 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 up.
right, right,
But
right.
so that, or yeah, because then universal basic income, people were mad. Advanced peace, people were mad.
Yeah,
Ending the golf course subsidy, people were mad. But at that point, I was just used to like, okay, it's gonna be scary a little bit, but
right.
what's more, it's like, is this more scary than the alternative if it doesn't happen? And that's always how I measure things. I'm like, okay, no, actually, that's more scary. So I'm gonna go ahead and get through this.
Real. That's real. Michael, we got you for a little bit, but I got a couple more questions I want to ask you to close it out. When we talk about, values, right, and family, I know something that's very important to you. I feel like in the Democratic Party from the left, we don't really hear family discussed at the same level that you might hear from the other side for the wrong reasons, right? Um, but you, sir, like myself, grew up in a single mother household, grew up in poverty, but now you're a father, now you're a husband. Talk about how that shapes your perspective, right? Just as a man, just as a public servant, right? Like, how does that, shape your worldview now, given your experiences of not having that or not seeing that growing up, and now you have to, you know, now you're running your own family, your own household, and how does that inform your leadership as a public servant now?
Yeah, I truly believe having created a family, being a father, being a husband, that the like government's highest function is to allow families to be families and parents to parent.
Mhm,
And that does have to be not even just head on normative families. However, families are construed, government's job is to make sure that folks are able to be in community, to be in love, and to provide for their children and their offspring if they choose to have children. If they don't choose to have family, those families deserve at least to be able to provide for themselves. And I don't know. I think it's like, I don't know. I think it's weird because I don't get offended when people talk about things that don't relate to me.
hmm,
Like, I'm like, all right, cool. So when I talk about my kids, it's not because I'm like, people who don't have kids don't matter. I'm just like, no, and my experience is informed by my children.
hmm,
And a lot of other people have that experience. So why shouldn't we talk about that? And why shouldn't we talk about how it's important that parents have enough money to pay for their kids to go to school, or pay for their kids to eat, or pay for their kids to have somewhere to sleep, etc. Um, Number two, I think it also has helped me understand sort of the stakes.
hmm,
Like, it's not just a game,
mhm,
or it's not just like a vote. It's like, no, it's real people, real futures, not just of folks in my community or folks I represent, but folks in my household
mhm, mhm,
who I love deeply, who deserve to live in a stable country,
mhm,
in a democracy, who deserve to have every opportunity to reach their potential, fulfill their dreams, who deserve not to be afraid of ICE kidnapping them or their friends,
mhm,
who deserve not to be afraid about whether their bodily autonomy, their human
uh,
rights, bodily autonomy.
talk to us through it.
Yeah, yeah, that they're able to make reproductive and healthcare choices for themselves. And yeah, it just hits different. Also, just a whole different level of inputs, particularly having a wife and a daughter.
Mhm,
Like, I've
mm,
always cared about like women issues because women are people. I care about people.
right,
But having a wife and a daughter who can educate and teach and experience the world differently than I experience it has been so impactful for my thinking and for prioritization in terms of in of issues. So, no, I think to underline all that, everyone's experiences informs their politics, informs their belief, informs their worldview. And I think the issue is that if you treat your experience as the only experience,
Mm,
or as the authoritative experience,
mm. Yeah,
or as a moat versus a bridge. So I like use my experiences as a bridge to other experiences that may not be mine,
right,
but
right.
I could use mine to connect to yours and kind of be like, okay, I get why that might matter. And then I would say, particularly as someone who grew up without a father, who grew up with a single mom and quote unquote done pretty well, that
Yeah,
I do believe that the role of father is important. That kids need fathers or father figures, just like they need mothers or and mother figures,
right,
whether that's in a heteronormative couple or not. Like even if two women are have a loving family and are raising a child,
right,
that child still needs a father figure somewhere. Just like if two men are raising a loving child and have a loving relationship, that
right.
child will still need a mother figure. Like the role of mother and father are so important, and I think we have to be able to talk about that in a way that acknowledges the diversity of everyone's life and everyone's experiences, but also the importance of having those roles, having those different inputs. And again, I say as someone who was raised by three amazing women, incredible women, they did an amazing job. And I can still say kids need father figures. And that's not, and those things aren't in conflict.
Right, right. 100%. Mike, I'll close this out with this. So, the name of this podcast is Vision for a Change because I want to talk to folks like yourself who are visionaries, who, are not just going with the status quo, they're going against the status quo. And I think that's one thing that we also lack from our side sometimes is our people who can paint a real vision of what we want this world to look like. So, sir, as I believe the future Lieutenant Governor of California, uh,
Thank you.
give us in the last 30 seconds or a minute, take however much time you want. What is your vision for California? When if aliens landed here the day after you're elected or a year after you're elected, we'll say, what California are they going to see? What's the vision that they're going to see?
Vision for California is a California where everyone has an opportunity to thrive, where housing is plentiful and affordable, where folks have access to the basics, clean water, clean air, good schools, where one job is enough to pay for everything, a place where innovation and entrepreneurship and ingenuity is rewarded, a place with real second chances, a place that integrates everyone into our society, that's welcoming to the foreigner and to the immigrant and makes sure that they are contributing to this mosaic that makes California so great. A state that's a model for the nation, not just in what we say, but in what we do. A state where you see folks getting sheltered and getting drug treatment and getting job placements. A state where you see kids reading and writing and innovating. A state that learned how to harness technology in a way that supported and not supplanted humans.
Mm,
Um, a state that continues to lead the world in innovation and in entertainment and in agriculture and in aerospace and all the things that we lead, but a state that also leaves no one behind, where everyone really has a stake in the future. And that's the California I think we deserve to live in. That's why I'm running for office again, because we could get there. We don't have MAGA and Trump running things in California.
mm,
We have all Democrats. We have an opportunity to build something special, to build an example to the rest of this country that no, these values work, that justice, inclusion, and fairness work, compassion works, pragmatism and common sense and intellect works, that reading books works, that being like having a life of the mind and not just relying on your reptilian brain actually works. And that we don't have to beat people down. We don't have to push people out. We don't have to exclude people. We don't have to demonize people. We don't have to blame people. We can literally actually build something together with everyone. And that's something together, something that's beautiful. And that's the kind of form of work to build.
I love it, Michael. Michael Tubbs, thank you so much, brother, for all your work, all your leadership over the years. You are a model for what leadership should be. You're a model for what courage should be. We need more folks like you. I hope you come back when after you're elected, and whenever you decide to run for a higher office, I hope you don't forget about us little folks over here, right?
No
but
problem. I promise you I'll come back. Thanks for the conversation.
but Michael, thank you so much. Love to your whole family. Love to Anna and your children. And best of luck on the campaign. If there's, let the folks know how they can reach you. By the way,
Yeah, you
before we
can
go.
reach me at Michael D. Tubbs, MichaelDTubbs on Twitter. I guess it's called X now, on Instagram, on TikTok. You can also go to michaeltubbsforca.com to get more information, to donate, to volunteer.